This episode is brought to you by SMZH, your independent go-to partner in all matters relating to finance, insurance, real estate, tax and law for both private and corporate clients. To find out more, go to smzh.ch. SMZH, tailor-made, holistic for you.
You are like in a constant boot camp because you always have to fight, and this makes you fit for new challenges. So I always knew that because I managed the last challenge, that I can also manage the next challenge. And this is something which is necessary.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Silvan.
Florim, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest today. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for this invitation. I just treated some patients, and that's why I look like this. So I hope you don't mind.
It's very authentic, I would say. So for people who wonder where that look comes from, you are a Swiss cardiologist and also the chief of the cardiology department at the Lucerne Kantonsspital, we say in German. Before we talk about your job and what keeps you busy these days, I actually want to travel back in time a bit and focus on your personal background. You were born in North Macedonia and moved to Switzerland when you were just 14 years old. What was that experience like for you, immigrating as a teenager? How did it shape you to who you are today?
So I was born in a country named Yugoslavia, which then changed to Macedonia. Actually changed into former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia and then North Macedonia. So my origin country has changed the name 3 times, but my current country, Switzerland, which welcomed me in 1991, has been really a great chance for me. I mean, I came to Switzerland because my father was working here. He was recruited to work in construction in the early 80s, and I've had phenomenal career. So in retrospect, it was a big luck for me to move to Switzerland in 91. It has been in the beginning, especially a bumpy road because going into a new country, I was 14, a new place, new friends, or in the beginning, no friends, and then a bit of friends, and then more friends, learning a new language, adapting to a new culture. It has been difficult, challenging, I would say. However, it has taught me a lot about life. It has taught me a lot how to adapt to new situations, to more challenging environment. And I think I did a good job on that, but I had a lot of support from my family, from friends, from people who met me, who just didn't know me, but still believed in me. So it has been overall a very interesting journey.
I imagine, I bet in that case. When we talk to founders on our podcast, often also with an immigrant background, they say this immigrant mindset is something that really helped them to work harder and maybe also go the extra mile, because you come from the outside, so you have to even prove yourself more than someone that was born in Switzerland. Was that also your case? Did sort of this immigrant mindset also push you to go harder and farther in that sense?
Well, I think it is probably true that if you have maybe difficult conditions to start with, then you adapt and work more. Whether you experience, let's say, discrimination or not, it doesn't really matter because you always think you might be discriminated. That I always had this in my mind that I have to be a hardworking person in order to have a chance. I realized that quite early in my life. I had a person who was very supportive in this and telling me this all the way along, and this was my mom. And she was always, my mom never went to school. However, she was always teaching me, listen, you have to become more than us, because I come from a very simple background, and had that situation. I had always parents, especially my mom, who was really motivating me to do more, to achieve more, to reach more. And then it started when it was a big achievement to go to high school here. Then it was a big achievement to go to medical school. back then, this was the first. I was the first generation where we started to have this restriction with going to medicine, numerus clausus, as we call it in Switzerland. And then it was then I finished my medical school. Then I suddenly I become a cardiologist. Or, then I have a fellowship in Oxford. Okay, fine. Then I come back and have a job, and then suddenly they promote me to a senior consultant, and then I'm the head of the department. Sometimes I really, and this is true. Sometimes I get scared when I look at my name tag. I look at my name tag, and I see, wow, it writes here professor and the head of the department. I said, is this really me? Is this? I'm serious. This is not made up. And that's because I was a hard worker, but I always maybe expected less than I achieved. And then this was of course generating a lot of momentum and motivation for the future. We said, okay, well, wow, it works, it flows.
With that, what you just described, right? Like it feels unreal, maybe even a bit. You didn't have such high expectations of what you are today, what you have achieved so far. How do you deal with that? Because that could also hinder your success along the way. When you say, no, I'm not good enough for this big role or to take the full responsibility. What kept you going, and how did you build that confidence that, no, let's give it a try. I actually might just do just fine.
Well, no, that's a fair point. However, because then eventually things still worked, you are like in a constant boot camp because you always have to fight. And this makes you fit for new challenges. So I always knew that because I managed the last challenge, that I can also manage the next challenge. And this is something which is necessary. I have two kids, two boys, wonderful boys, but they now grow up as non-immigrants here. They were born in the UK, but they are here since 3 months old. So for them, it will be much more challenging because I have paved the way. My way I had to pave myself, and I knew I can pave ways. I knew I can overcome challenge because I had all the time challenges. And I think still it's good to be rather on the modest side and not to expect too much, because you cannot expect my career. If you look at my career, yes, it's a great career, it's a great success, but you cannot take that for granted. It will always take you being hardworking, but it will also take moments in your life where you have to decide left or right, and then you have to make the right decision. So it's not just your talent, it's a bit of luck, it's a bit of environment, it's a bit things you cannot influence. But you should influence what you can, and that's what I have done.
I like that. Focus on what is within your control in that sense. You mentioned first you went to high school, sort of the first of the family here in Switzerland. Then you studied, and you did study medicine. What sparked your interest initially into going into medicine?
I don't know exactly. So I came to Switzerland when I was 14. And since day one, when I arrived here, I knew I want to become a doctor. And actually, in the first day in school, they put me in a class which is called Realschule, which is like a very low grade. Like you don't, from Realschule, you don't become a doctor. You become maybe, I don't know, you have a really low paid job, and you don't become a doctor. Not clearly not an academic, for people who don't live in Switzerland. So then I remember the teacher came to me, and he just realized that I'm a bit, like very attentive. And then he asked me, he said, what do you want to become when you're old? Actually, he asked me what language I spoke, because I didn't speak German. And I spoke very well French. I learned that in school, and I have a flair for languages. So he asked me, what do you want to be when you are older in French? And I said, médecin. And he said, well, it's a bit difficult with médecin. I know I packed my bag. I know this. I packed my bag and said, let's go to the class where I can become a médecin, the 14-year-old Florim. And he said, well, it's a bit difficult. So he then asked me some questions about math and physics and stuff. And then he said, okay, I think, yes, we should go to the next grade. So I changed from Real to Sekundarschule on the same day I started here. And this was one of the moments in my life where I had the luck to have to meet such a wonderful teacher who really then moved me from the low grade class to a higher grade class, and which paved my way. So he did a fantastic job, and I will be always thankful to Beat Schwagler who did this for me back then. He unfortunately died 3 years ago, But I always think of him and think, wow, what a momentum in my life. What a wonderful man to see this and to enable this for me.
That's outstanding. Thank you for sharing that story. And I think it's a great example of how people support and also guide you along the way in the right directions and probably help and shape you to become who you are today in that sense.
Yes, and yes, absolutely. And for me, the lesson I've drawn from then, I was not back then. I was not in the situation to give help. I was needing help. But nowadays, I am in the situation I can help people. So when I see talent, I think of Beat Wagner and say, okay, maybe this is a guy or a girl or a doctor or a nurse I can help. And maybe this is the moment. Maybe this is the next talent. I think it taught me that you should always be willing to at least explore the talent in people and maybe open a small door for them. And this is I became like this because I have had several people in my life who have opened the door. So I want to be a door opener too.
That's wonderful to give back to the next generation, so to speak. Wonderful. So let's fast forward a bit. In 2019, you established the Cardio Center in Lucerne, a new cardiology practice in the heart of Lucerne, basically. What was your vision behind creating this center?
I love being a doctor, but although I'm not from an entrepreneur family, I still somehow have this entrepreneurship in my blood. So basically, it was in 2017 when we first had this idea with together with the hospital, and I said, listen, guys, I'm thinking of going out of the hospital and working in a outside as a private cardiologist. And then the hospital director said, well, why don't we do that together? And then I was a bit surprised that because I'm actually an interventional cardiologist and this is clearly non-interventional. I said, okay. Then I said to him, so you want to get rid of me, to get me out of the hospital then he said, no, I want actually to bind you. And he did. So now almost 10 years later, I still work for the same hospital. And it was good because it gave me a new possibility to really build something from the scratch. And I think building something from the scratch is something great, because in the hospital here everything is built. You can amend it, you can maybe improve it. You sometimes it's challenging to keep it the way it is, because there is always people who have done a wonderful job before you. But there I had to build it completely new, and I love that challenge. And we are very successful. And that private practice was founded in 2019, and it's still operating. We are now opening actually another facility, because the place back then he actually I was very, when they asked me how many square meters you want, I said, just give me 100, because I was worried that we will not be able to pay the rent, because the rent is actually quite expensive in that position in the heart of Lucerne. But then I was lucky that they pushed me to take 350 square meters, which are nowadays 5 years later not enough, and that's why we had to expand. So it was a great experience for me to play entrepreneurship in a small and rather controlled environment. And it was, of course, of mutual benefit also for the hospital, because we are now a referral point for many patients from the whole country. And I have a great team there and a great team here in the hospital. And I work a lot. I work much more than I would have worked without that cardio center. But the fact that I can go back and forth, that I can create a bubble for my patient where they are looked after non-interventionally, and then we look for them interventionally here. It fits very well, and at the moment it really feels great.
Amazing. That's so cool. I'm so happy for you that it's going very well. And I like the analogy between your job basically and also entrepreneurship. And I want to continue that path because you, as the chief of the cardiology department at the Lucerne Hospital, you also manage a large and a diverse team, something that also many startup entrepreneurs have to do at least at one point if they continue to grow. So I also want to talk a bit about your leadership style. So what do you believe are the golden rules for successfully leading and motivating such a team? Because that's very challenging, but also very important and potentially rewarding.
It's a very difficult question because I don't think there is golden rules for everyone. And I, to be honest with you, I never learned this. I never went into a school to learn leadership. So I think a lot of it is intuition. It has to do a lot also with fairness, to be fair, because if you have a diverse team, it's very important to be fair. It has a lot to do also with valuing people who just do more and work more. So fairness does not mean for me leveling up everything and treating equally people who are extremely motivated and who are not extremely motivated. I will give you an example. I had a very motivated doctor who was actually training cardiology in our department, but super motivated. So for him, I made a lot of things possible. We trained him very well. We sent him now to Canada, and then I plan to take that guy back because he is just extremely good, extremely motivated, very skilled, very good human skills as well, social. So not a person who is poisoning the team spirit. So for people like him, I'm very happy to pave the way for him and to really enable him to go into a fast track. And I think that's because he deserves it, because he also contributes to the success of our department team, and it motivates maybe all the people to do that. So it's this little bits of which I mentioned, which are important. But I'm sure I'm not a perfect boss, and I'm sure that I have my mistakes, and I'm always willing to listen to the critical points. If you have a healthy climate in your team, then your team usually would tell you, listen, here, this is not okay. And then you have to listen to those points. You cannot ignore and just pretend that you are always right. And you have to have the greatness to say, yes, I was wrong, I'm sorry. And so this is the little bit. So I would not be able to put this into paper. Maybe in 1 month I might say something slightly different, but still I'm happy with my role. It's a challenging role because the team is big, it's diverse. You have to also look at specific situations. If someone is too maybe, let's say, if someone is just very in a difficult private situation, family stuff, then you have to be supportive for such kind of people. Then you have to have a heart, and then maybe also motivate the rest of the team to work more to support this person who is now in a crisis. I see my team always also as a family, and I want them to feel like in a family. And in a family, you help each other. In a family, you understand each other. In a family, you are usually nice to each other. And if you happen to be not nice to your brother, then you say, I'm sorry, I was not nice to you yesterday. And this is the spirit I want to live here.
I like that. I take away two things. You're very supportive. You spot talent, you support them, but you also support the team with whatever they need, and being very open to feedback, and also down to earth to say, I made a mistake, you're right, I was wrong, to keep the culture intact.
That's very important. And if you are a hard working, that helps, because I think being a boss who is always in the office and never is in the forefront, this is a bit difficult. I think you have to be around. You have to go to your rounds. You have to see patients. You have to feedback. So I have patients. There is interventions I don't do. So I then feedback to my specialist to say, hey, you did a great job, you fantastic, I saw the patient yesterday in outpatient clinic, he's fine, thank you so much for doing it. And if something doesn't work, then say, can you explain why it didn't work, but not in a controlling manner, but rather in a really understanding manner. And then of course I took a great team. I have now added some new people, and then of course, with time it becomes your responsibility, because you choose the people. So if you choose the wrong guys or the wrong lads, then that's it. Then it's on you. Then you have to say, well, it was a bad choice.
Exactly. You're ultimately responsible. That's the job of the boss in that sense.
Absolutely.
Now we learned about the cardio center that you opened. You're also, of course, still involved with the hospital. It's very closely tied to each other. And I just wonder, there's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of things going on in your life. You work very hard, you work a lot. How do you stay focused with so much going on?
It's a very good question. I think what you need is, if you are as busy as I am, you need to be structured. And if you cannot give the structure to yourself, then you need help. So because I'm not the person who let's say I cannot manage my agenda by myself. I just can't. It's just too much. So I have a personal assistant who does that. She works for me 50% of her time. The rest of the time, she's a mother, looks after her kids. And I think you have to be able to delegate things. And so my agenda, it's her territory. So if my wife wants to go out on a dinner with me, she usually organizes it also through my assistant, because then everything works and I know I can rely on that. So I think that's really very important, to have a certain structure. And then I have also, what I've done is to really try to organize my week. So on Mondays, I do the most complex procedures, because that's usually after the weekend where I'm the fittest. And on Friday, I do the easiest interventions, because that's the day where I don't need to have this full focus for 4 or 5 hours. I don't do interventions which take 5 hours on a Friday. And then on Tuesday, I'm in my outpatient clinic. On Wednesday, I try to be more in a supervising role rather than in a forefront role. And on Thursday, usually I do some valve interventions in the morning, but just a few. And then I come back to the office, and then that's usually my office day, where I have meetings, where I deal with office stuff. And then I have also a manager for the clinic here in the hospital, who is doing the job of really like contracts and administrative stuff goes through her. And then in the cardio center, in the outpatient clinic, I have a doctor who is actually responsible for the daily work. So I don't see the referrals now myself. So I think I've tried to structure it in a way that it can work freely, and still they report to me, and then I have a look. But you have to be able to trust. If you can't trust, if you need to control everything, then it's very difficult. Then it's going to be impossible to have all these duties. But if you have good people, and if you have the necessary trust in these people, then it can become more supportable for you. Although it's still a lot of work. I mean, I still sleep only 5 to 6 hours per night, never more, and still includes weekends, and still includes writing emails on a short flight, and still includes a lot of work, but it works.
Wow, that sounds very intense just by listening to it.
It's something you choose for yourself, and I think that's I could change this tomorrow. Actually, in 6 months, I could just leave, because that's how long it would take for me to leave this. So it's in my hands. Nobody forces you to do that. And if you do it, then you are responsible for it, and you are responsible for yourself. And of course, you always have, in every job you do, you have things which you like a lot, and you have things which you don't like. And then you do the balance, and you look if it's still good for you.
Exactly. But I also wonder, what keeps you going? Because this sounds so intense. You obviously, I see your high energy. You seem to really like and enjoy what you're doing. So this is not a stress factor per se, but hopefully also rewarding. But what keeps you going for all these years to work so hard, so intensely on what you do, with all the pressure and stress that comes with it?
In German, there is a saying, and I think it's from Max Frisch, a famous Swiss author. It says, wer einmal richtig hungrig war, wird nie satt. So if someone has ever been really hungry, he will never be satisfied. You will always have this hunger. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know now how to phrase it, maybe, the fact that I have this background coming from nothing. My father just going 5 years to school, my mother never going to school. No one in my family ever thought of studying, of going to university. And then new country, you come with 14, and you have this background, and you are just a poor kid who doesn't speak German. And then to make this career, then you just never satisfy your hunger. And maybe when I'm 80 and think back, I said, oh God, at 45, I should have changed and done something else. But, as long as it feels good, and I can still manage this and not be depressive and need help from a psychologist or so, it's fine, and I like it. But I'm aware that this is a very consuming job. That said, you need always people who give you energy. And people who give me energy are, of course, my team and are my patients. Then you will help a patient, and then he will write you an email, a letter. He would maybe call you and express his gratitude, and that motivates a lot. You treat a patient which is so difficult to be treated, and then you do that successfully, and then that sometimes I say to myself, okay, this is now gasoline for 1 month, because you have done something which was so difficult, and which maybe others have not been able to do, and then you can do it, and you can make the difference. So this is all very complex and motivates you.
Yeah, I can only imagine, but very much understand what you just described. And it seems that really your childhood basically also sort of fueled your hungriness in that sense to who you are today, and that you want to keep going and keep pushing. And I wonder, along all the journey of your career, were you ever seriously considering to stop, to switch jobs, or to have less of a responsibility in your role?
Yeah, I was always considering, but I don't know if I was lying to myself, because yes, you can always say, no, I actually didn't want this, but then it fell. But you always want it. You have constant hunger, needs constant feeding. So you are just, what you're doing is you feed your hunger all the time. So then you look for the next challenge to feed your hunger, because you are just hungry. I think, if you in order to consider switching, you need to really feel satisfied, and say, okay, well, I'm not hungry anymore. But that moment has not come. But I don't, see, I don't. What is very important is to know that you have certain capabilities which make you special, and which, it's not good to think that you desperately need this job, and if you don't have this job, then you are out of offers. So I know I have a special value. If the hospital likes that or not, that doesn't matter, but I know I have this value, because I see the patients waiting. In the cardio center, I have now patients waiting for 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks to see me, and coming from far away. So I know I'm special, and that makes me be more relaxed in my job, because I don't fear losing my job. If you come and you say, tomorrow you don't work here, fine, that's okay.
You find something else, of
You
course.
find something else. I would found a new company. So that's the great thing of having had this experience of overcoming challenges. You want to be threatening to anything, not at all. But you knowing about your values, knowing that you can do things, that you can do things better, that this is about self-confidence. Then you are automatically more happy. But if you work in a stressful environment where you think, oh wow, if they fire me, I'm out. That's bad. It's difficult if you are 63, and you have 2 years to go, and then your boss suddenly changes, and a new boss appears, and then he says, well, I don't like your work, and then you have to adapt. That's a difficult thing. And then founding something new, it's difficult. But in my age, I'm now 47. That's absolutely fine. And living in such a country where you have the opportunity, you have the safety. It's a lawful country. It's difficult, of course, to be if you're in a country which is very authoritarian, where you are dependent on politics. But in Switzerland is a fair country. It's a great country. It's the best country in the world.
Fully agree with that. I have one more question about what you just described with the hunger. You said you're always hungry. There's more to go for, more to go after. Do you think, and if so, when and if you will ever be satisfied? You will ever arrive at this point where you say, now I've done, I'm not hungry anymore?
I hope. I see. I could not say for sure that day will be tomorrow, or in 1 month, or in 1 year, or in 10 years. But I hope that one day I can look back and say, okay, fine, this was it.
What do you think would need to happen that this will be the case? Is there a milestone that you want to achieve, or is it more a feeling, or how do you imagine that to happen?
I have had bad experience with milestones, because then you have reached one, and then you want the other. So I haven't set any milestones for myself, or any goals. I think the most important thing is, if I'm honest, is to be healthy, because you know sometimes we take health for granted. And it, this doesn't mean if you are healthy today, it doesn't mean that we will healthy tomorrow. So for me, it's really important that I and my family, my wife, my kids, and my close family, that they are all, healthy for a hopefully very long time. And that's that's so important. You cannot overestimate that, because working in my job and seeing people even in young age having really very difficult fates and very difficult situations, so that's very important. And then the next thing is, I think, I want to be happy. I want to get up in the morning and come to the job in a motivated fashion, and be able to inspire other people and to help and to make the difference. And if I'm not healthy, or if I'm not happy, then I need to change something, become more healthy if it's possible, and become more happy by changing something in your environment or in your job.
Definitely. And talking about being healthy, stress, for example, can be major cause of cardiovascular diseases. At least that's what we learn and read about. So how do you stay healthy with all that is going on, and sort of the little sleep that you get with 5 to 6 hours? How do you stay healthy? How do you stay productive?
Well, apparently I must be having very good genes, because at the moment this is one of the things I'm not doing very well. I would love to do more sports, and I would love to be more active, but somehow I just at the moment I'm not achieving that. And I hope that can change in the future. But I think it's very important to really think of balancing your work activity. And I I don't need a lot. So if I work 10 hours, I don't need 10 hours to relax. So I only, and if I have worked 20 weeks without holidays, I don't need 5 weeks to relax. So I can recharge myself very quickly. That's a bit of luck. If, let's say, last weekend, for example, the last week, it was a very tough week. I was working hard and didn't sleep a lot. So the weekend, I just slept much more. But then on Monday, I was completely recharged again. So I try to get more sleep. I hope that I will take this. Maybe you asking this question, maybe that will motivate me to go to the gym more often. I try to eat healthy. I lost some weight by just looking after your food, because I think that's also very important. The food you take. And then stress is itself is not negative as long as you can cope with it. You need to have strategies to cope with stress. So this means have an analytic mind of analyzing why you are stressed, and then draw the right conclusions. And if you don't know if going left or right is the right thing at the moment, then you need to speak to people who know. Then you need to speak to people whom you trust, and to speak to specialists. Like, if a decision to, let's say, if you want to buy something, and then you are not sure if you want to buy that, because if you, let's say, piece of land, and you have this money in your bank account, you don't know what to do, and now you're thinking that, then of course, if this stresses you, then you need to speak to someone who is a specialist for this, and maybe to speak to the second one, and then you have to rethink about that. So I when I feel confident about decisions, then I decide. But once I don't feel confident about decision making, then I get help. So I don't get help for every decision I make, of course, and I don't pretend to make every decision right. But sometimes, if things stress me, I need to speak to someone. If I cannot do it, maybe someone else can do it. And I think here you have to have some sort of understanding also for yourself, that you are not almighty, that you need sometimes help.
We all do, for sure. Definitely. There's one last topic, Florim, that I want to talk to you about, and it's social media. We heard you have a long wait list already, so you don't need any more clients. But despite that, you're very active on social media, especially on Instagram and TikTok. What motivated you to sort of become a medical influencer, if I can call you that way?
Well, I only have 10,000 or 10,500 followers on Instagram, so it's still not an influencer range. So let's face it, this is something very personal. So I like the scene. I like giving talks. I like when people listen what I say. I'm an extroverted person. I'm not an introvert, and this comes with that. So you cannot force someone who is completely introvert to do this role, but I have this, and it started without really trying to get more clients. But sometimes, let's say, my last post was about when you measure your blood pressure, and it was for the Albanian community, because unfortunately in the Balkans, people measure a lot of blood pressure, but not when they are fine, which is the recommended, but when they are in pain or in stress. So then they measure the blood pressure and they generate a lot of trouble on stress for the family, because then they measure the blood pressure is 160 because they are headache, and then they measure again and it's 180, and then they go to a doctor, and then they everything becomes very stressed. So I did a video, a short video of 1.5 minutes, saying, okay, listen, guys, my recommendation is measure the blood pressure if you are fine. If you are not fine, then just don't measure. And if you are really not fine, then look for help for a doctor. But then the measuring of the blood pressure will not change anything. And this video was viewed just on TikTok, like, I don't know, 100,000 times in a very short period of time. And then it was looked on Facebook and on Instagram. So with this, I reach now so many people. Now people know now, so I can make a difference with a short video. I can influence many people and teach also many people. And then I'm a professor of medicine, so I have this teaching attitude as well. So I think if you can teach, with such a short video, do the teaching, wow, let's do that, great. So it's that's also the motivation, to be able to spread a message which is important for you. And you have to be extrovert, and I am a bit extrovert, but yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's so cool because it's way easier to reach 100,000 people through social media than getting them into your practice or in a lecture hall. It's simply will not happen. It's fantastic. What were some of the surprising or great things coming out of your social media presence? Did you get any speaking gigs or anything cool that came out of that presence?
Well, clearly I get a lot of patients, and I get patients from flying over late. I got a patient from the Middle East coming, and then saying, well, I've come to your place because you are the best. And I said, well, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of good cardiologists around, but that's one. So you build up a certain fame, and then because that's very nowadays, the credibility is really also based on social media. Your street credibility is based on social media, and that also takes place now in medicine. So since I'm active on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn I post for the professional community. So I have some ideas how things can be done, in my job, like opening the arteries, if it should be the way A or the way B. So I do this post sometimes with a provoking message, sometimes really intentionally disruptive, in order to generate some discussion. Then I would post a short video and then say, like if you agree, and comment if you don't. And then people would either like or comment, and then it generates a lot of traffic. And so the great thing about this is that you really then get invitations from people you would not ever meet or expect from them. So I'm quite famous in India, and this started with that. So I get a lot of invitations from India. I'll go now next week to India. And then you are then also, I have sometimes, then I fly to a country, and then the flight attendant has seen me, and she said, I've seen you, and this is like crazy. Why me? So it's very fun. You have these fun moments, and you get to know way much more people that you will ever meet. And it's, I mean, very soon I will need a social media manager. For the moment, that's not a top priority. And I until now it has paid off for me, but you have to be careful, and because you can provoke a shitstorm on you. You have to bear that in mind, that what you are saying, that you become a public person, that you are saying your words are read in a different way. You are not a private person anymore. It's your Instagram account, but still it's your role. So I have learned also my lessons in terms of that. Again, it is thing that is special for me, that I like and that I do, and of course it has always some very good things about it, and then you have always your downsides.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's super fascinating. So now we talked about social media, we talked about the hospital, the cardio center, and I just wonder what's next for you, Florian. What have you planned for the future? I know you're still hungry, so what do you plan to do in the near future?
Well, I see that changes from day to day. I don't really have now, a clear plan. At least I would not share it with you here. I think what is important for me is really one day to decide if I want to go more into an entrepreneur role or not. That's like for me the next decision I have to make. I postpone that decision on a regular basis because the job I'm having now, so here, of course, in the hospital, I'm in an employee setting, but we have a great team. I have a great boss. They look good after me. We have a very good collaboration. So I think that's the reason I that thought I had in 2017, that thought is still in my mind, to basically go out completely and do something different. But at the moment I have no motivation to do that, because it just everything fits very well, and I'm happy. So I think if that changes, then I might rethink my role again, but I'm considering that on a regular basis. I discuss, and the fact that I can manage this cardio center in the city also gives me this entrepreneur role, and there it's a small company. It's owned by the hospital, but I can manage it very in a more free way. It's less bound to these corporate rules and regulations we have here. So it's good, and I hope that in maybe in 3 years time, when we repeat this interview, that you will find different Florim, who has now much more plans, but at the moment, no.
Done deal. I like that. We can already schedule a date for an update interview. So everything that is left for me to ask you then are 6 rapid fire questions. I have a short question and you have to answer in 1 sentence maximum. You ready?
Yes.
What's your favorite way to unwind after a long day of work?
Usually have a phone call
Nice.
with someone non-medical.
No, yeah, I imagine. Yeah. If you weren't a cardiologist, what other profession might you have pursued?
Teacher or a businessman?
Nice. What's a book that has significantly influenced you?
It's the book Homo Faber from Max Frisch. Fantastic book and a must read for everyone.
Great. What's one piece of advice that you would give to your 18-year-old self?
To my 18 years old, I would say do it the same way. I wouldn't do anything different.
What does money mean to you?
Freedom.
And the last question for you today, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, no matter if dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would like to speak to a historic figure who really made a lot of impact. And now spontaneously, I would probably pick Kemal Atatürk, the founder of modern Turkey, because in that time, having this idea of really giving a country which was an empire, a big empire, a completely different direction, and that's like change management in the extreme form. So I think that would be the person I would like to meet and speak and understand why he did it and how he did it.
I'm sure that would be a very interesting conversation. Florim, these were all my questions for you today. Thank you so much for your high energy, for your insights, and for your time today. It was a lot of fun, and I wish you lots of success and all the best for the future.
Thank you so much. It was a great fun, and I hope we didn't say anything wrong today. And I hope that people like this, and that at least be inspired a little bit with this kind of podcast, because it's a very personal thing, and I was really, everything I said was very honest and not prepared. I didn't prepare the questions, as you noticed.
That's the best. Thank you for your time, Florim.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.